Hitting the record now. I would like to welcome you all to this evening's program, which is Self-Compassion, Freedom from the Inner Critic with Elizabeth Pyjov. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jennifer Clayton. I am the Attorney Wellbeing Program Manager for the New York State Bar Association. And this month we are focused on mental health and well-being. And so we're grateful to have Elizabeth here. It is her third time presenting for the Wellbeing Program here at NYSBA. And we are so grateful to have her come and speak on the topic of freedom from the inner critic. Elizabeth is a lawyer, a meditation teacher, scholar, theologian, and wellness coach who holds 3 degrees, speaks 5 languages, has a Stanford Medical School neuroscience background, and works at a top law firm. She's been meditating for over 15 years and found that certain practices greatly help her thrive in her legal career. She shares these techniques by offering self-compassion, diversity, happiness, energy, connection, and resilience programs through her organization, Self-Compassion for Lawyers. Elizabeth has taught 10,000 people to meditate in the last 10 years. She has offered workshops for the judges in the Eastern District of New York and the New York Supreme Court. Presented at top law firms like Baker McKenzie, Quinn Emanuel, and Vincent and Elkins, Harvard Law School, Columbia Law School, and Stanford. She serves on the Committee of Mindfulness and Wellbeing at the New York City Bar Association. She also teaches weekly meditation classes virtually every week through her organization, the Happiness Sanha. This work is the biggest privilege of her life, and again, we are so grateful to have her here this evening. So Elizabeth, welcome, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that kind introduction. And thank you so much for having me back. I love presenting to this group. It's always a lot of fun. And thank you for joining. So today we will delve deeply into self-compassion and freedom from that inner voice that makes us miserable. We all have this voice in our heads that basically makes our lives very difficult and makes us feel like we're never enough. And we're going to talk about and demystify that voice. But first, I really want to talk to you, get to know you. If you don't mind turning your video on, I would love to see more of you. It's so much more fun to talk to people than black boxes. So if you're in a place where it's possible, oh, I see a few of you pop up. Thank you so much. It's just so much more fun that way. If you can, it doesn't matter how you look. If you think you don't look good enough to turn on video, that's the inner critic. That's exactly what we're going to address today. Great. So now put a plus in the chat if you can see me well, and put 2 pluses if you can hear me well. And I want to make this interactive. So I kind of want to start this interactive way of being. So just put a plus if you can see me, you can hear me. Awesome. I'd love to know where you are geographically. I am in Manhattan on the Upper East Side. Put where you are in the state of New York, or maybe you're outside of the state of New York currently. Let's just get a sense of where all these inner critics are located that we're going to battle. Virginia, Brooklyn, Hudson Valley, Upper West Side. We're close by, Judith. Upper West Side. Good to know. Very nice. So what we're going to talk about is, how does this inner critic impact our lives? Where does it come from? And most importantly, what can we do about it? And how does self-compassion help? And it is Wellbeing Month. So I'm very happy that you decided to join, that we're having this program that I haven't seen anything that lifts up the level of well-being more quickly, more effectively, and more easily than self-compassion and understanding what the inner critic is and finding some space between you and your inner critic. It's just like a light switch can go off and suddenly your life gets much easier. And I hope that will be true for you. So we'll talk about the science of the inner critic. We'll talk about the research. We'll talk about strategies, and we will meditate, because meditation is an amazing tool. I would say the most effective tool to battle the inner critic. So put a happy face if you've meditated 0 to 10 times in your life, if you're just starting. And I love it when beginners join, or you can wave, but I don't always see it. So put a happy face if you don't mind, just so I can see. So I see we have a lot of seasoned meditators. That's great. Wonderful. So we'll do a small 2-minute practice right away And then you'll have a higher level of awareness for the rest of the hour together. So let's start with 3 intentional breaths. It's the end of the day. We probably all need it. So inhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and exhale out through the mouth for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And a second deep breath, inhaling for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale out through the mouth for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the very last breath in this way. Fill your lungs fully with the deepest breath you've taken today for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale out through the mouth for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wonderful. So begin by placing everything down. If there's something on your lap, if you're cold, put on more clothes because your body temperature drops a little bit as you meditate. Sit at the very back of your seat, so your back is fully supported and your hips are at the very back of the seat. And you might put one hand just gently inside the other and rest them on your lap in a traditional meditation posture. So let your hands just relax down on your lap. Find a posture of dignity. Find a posture of self-friendliness. And closing the eyes. Take a moment to acknowledge the intention of this practice. This meditation will help you develop the concentration to quiet the mind, prepare the mind for happiness, and free the mind of suffering. So with your eyes closed, release any tension in the forehead and release any tension around the eyes and all those little muscles around the eyes and around your cheeks and in your jaw. Release the skin on the face. Relax any tension in your neck and throat. Feel that pleasure of release. Soften the shoulders. No need to carry any weight there. Let your chest be light. Relax the belly completely. And feel the whole body resting easily. Release all your weight onto the earth, onto the chair. As an act of self-compassion, relax the back, releasing your upper back and feeling it, and your mid-back and your lower back. Soften the back of your hips. Relax the left arm, the left elbow, the left wrist, the left palm. And relax the right arm, the right elbow, the right wrist, the right palm. Relax your legs and your feet. And now notice your breath for just a moment. For just a brief moment, tune into how your breath feels. Tuning into the rhythm of your breath, you tune into yourself. And now take a deep breath in again to your own count. Deep breath out through the mouth. And thank yourself. Thank your mind for having done this practice. Opening your eyes gently as you feel ready. And welcome back. That was our centering practice. Our next meditation will be self-compassion, but I just wanted to do a practice to relax, to refocus. How did that go? Put a word in the chat if you like. So let's start with what is the inner critic. I have the very fancy definition that the inner critic is the voice that makes us miserable all the time. It's the voice that makes us procrastinate. It's the voice that's not at all objective. And it's the voice that makes you feel like you are not enough no matter what you do. So even if as a lawyer, you have a very productive day, you serve every client well, you finish all your work, you're kind to everyone, the inner critic will tell you you should have cleaned out your closet too, or I bet you could have done this whole thing better, or I bet you could have done it faster, or I bet you could have been even nicer or more productive or prettier or wrapped it all up in a bow. So the inner critic always wants us to be more successful, always wants us to be some reasonable version of ourselves. The key that I want to get across early is that the inner critic is a voice that's fundamentally unreasonable. It's very hard to improve and grow from a place of inner critic because it's so unreasonable that it becomes paralyzing. It's much easier to grow from a place of self-compassion. So you know that the inner critic is talking to you when you hear a voice in your head that's a voice of frustration or disappointment or aggression. And the interesting thing about the inner critic is that it's often not really your voice. It's a voice that you've heard from others and that keeps playing in your head. So it could be a parent's voice, a grandparent's voice, a teacher's voice, a disapproving friend's voice. It could even be like your great Aunt Irma's voice, and you don't even know who Aunt Irma is, but she passed it down to her child, and that child passed it down to their child, and they pass it down to their parents, and they pass it down to you. So notice what voices don't feel authentic, or if there's a voice that feels like you could never do enough to please it. And what the inner critic is at the end of the day is a form of aggression. When aggression isn't expressed, it's expressed through criticism. I had a very strong inner critic for a very long time. And I think I had the perfect setup. I had the perfect trap in my life to have a very strong inner critic. I was born in the post-Soviet Union in a culture of enormous perfectionism in a very accomplished family. And my parents then immigrated to California, to the US when I was young. So I grew up in an immigrant family, which just added to the perfectionism. I spent over 8 years as a Harvard student getting 3 degrees, and then 2 years studying neuroscience at Stanford. And those are also environments of very high achieving perfectionists with very high expectations. And it was at Stanford Medical School that I was introduced to these practices I'll share today. And I realized, being kind to myself, the research suggests I'll actually get much further than not being kind to myself. And I learned that the perfectionist is just another version of the inner critic. And I started doing self-compassion practices, and I've become much happier, much more calm. And I hope to share this knowledge of these practices, these ideas, this science with you. And that it brings you that same lightness and confidence and compassion. Our confidence doesn't come from self-esteem, it comes from self-compassion. And the other thing that happens once you start to find space from the inner critic is that your level of energy goes up. Every time you criticize yourself, your body feels like someone is attacking it, like someone is in front of you shouting at you, because the body can't really tell the difference between inner and outer experiences and how it reacts. The brain, like if you were to imagine a hamburger, you would probably start salivating if you like hamburgers. If you like pie or ice cream or warm brownies or whatever it is you like, if you were to imagine it, you start salivating. The brownie isn't there, but the reaction in your mouth is there. So there's not a person attacking you. There's just an inner critic in your mind, but your body will react as if it's there. So your body wastes a lot of energy in response to your own inner critic, and your amygdala lights up. Every time you criticize yourself, this little part of the brain lights up called the amygdala, which is responsible for freaking out. And as it freaks out, it raises your body temperature, it raises your heartbeat, and your body is basically functioning on high alert. You don't want to do that to yourself 30 times a day or 20 times a day. You want to only do that in a time of great risk where you need to save yourself physically and run from a wild tiger, which doesn't happen very often in New York, but it might. And you want to save it for those times when you are physically in danger. So let's start off by seeing how others depict the inner critic. Now that we've defined it and kind of demystified it a little bit, let's look at a comic together. Let's start off light, because the inner critic is kind of funny if you really start to look at it. It's almost comical. I think this comic is a perfect description of the inner critic. This strip starts with choose someone and compare yourself unfavorably to them. Great pastime. And then examine your face closely in the mirror. Notice all the flaws. Followed by relive embarrassing, awful moments that occurred years ago. And make a mental note of all the people you regularly disappoint. And then finally, to top it off, disregard any compliments from people who supposedly love you. Emphasis on the supposedly. And then resign yourself to believing that from now on, this is how you will feel forever. So that's the comic strip. Put a plus if any of that resonates. And I like this comic because it's a great depiction of how ridiculous the inner critic actually is. But when we hear it as a voice in our heads, we think it's true. Thank you for those courageous enough to put pluses. Let's build some New York State Bar common humanity through put one thing the inner critic has told you that is unreasonable. If at some point the inner critic said something unreasonable to you, and you're like, yeah, that sounds kind of right, because when we hear it, we do kind of believe it. You are fat, right? I feel like so many people's inner critics say that you are fat. Thank you. Or that was stupid. Or I'd love to hear your versions of what the inner critic tells you. Or you should have done that better. But I know we have 46 people here, which means we have 46 inner critics here. So I'd love to see maybe 5 or 6 more versions of what your inner critic tells you. Because to distance ourselves from it, we first need to see what it is. We need to see the pattern of thought. Not smart enough. Thank you, Sam. That one comes up, I think, for everyone all the time. I've spoken to so many Harvard professors, Stanford professors, law firm partners who still think that you are the worst. And it's very vague, right? The inner critic's usually very vague. Like there's nothing else you can do when you hear that you're the worst. You could have done more. So like that's the plague of the 21st century, that you can always do more and technology is always accessible. You shouldn't have said that. Yes, you shouldn't have, or you should have said that. You should have been much further along than you are now. Yes, like you should be much further along in your career than you are now. You should be in much better shape than you are now. Thank you. Now that you were successful, don't let go of it. No, don't let it go to your head. You can fail at the next talk. Yes, you can fail at any time. No one likes you. That's a big one. My favorite, you are only as good as what you do for others. Yes. So thank you for this bouquet of criticisms that it's good to hold it up and to question it. And also to know that others have it too. Put a plus if you could relate to any of those that your fellow lawyers have. You shouldn't have settled that case. This is very lawyer specific. Yes. So I'm glad that you can relate to each other's. Let's look at the science of thought. The National Science Foundation published research that we have about 60,000 thoughts per day. Any guess as to the percent of those thoughts that are negative? 80%. We're thinking thoughts all the time and 80% are negative. And out of those 60,000, 76% are self-critical. So more than 3/4 of our thoughts are self-critical. What a heavy burden to bear. And this is if the mind is untrained. And this next statistic I find most shocking and also most interesting. 95% of our thoughts today are the same as our thoughts yesterday or the day before or a year ago. So we're saying negative things to each other, but we're saying the exact same negative things to each other over and over and over again. So even when we change and circumstances change, we keep having the same critical thoughts day in, day out, year in, year out, and I would say over generations. This is the statistic that I hope makes you question the inner critic. Because if your inner critic were accurate, the thoughts would change because situations change, you change, circumstances change, but they're exactly the same. And another thing that you might have noticed already in this talk today is that even though we're different people, we have different strengths, different weaknesses, we're in different places in our careers, we come from different backgrounds, but our self-critical thoughts are very similar to each other. So across people, across very different people, the things like that was stupid, I should have done more, I don't look good enough, they're all the same. So you have the same self-critical thoughts as the other people here today, which means they're just not authentic. And when our inner critic turns on, we go into a kind of default mode, a default state. And my default is very similar to Jennifer's default, similar to Cassandra's, similar to Leslie's, similar to Stephen's, similar to all of you here. When we're nervous, stressed, anxious, and self-critical, we all sound kind of the same. It's when we're self-compassionate that our unique sense of humor comes out, our authenticity, our intentions, our personality comes out when we're in a calm, self-compassionate state. So we all have these thoughts. And what I want to do together is to start to undermine the inner critic's authority. Because the less you'll criticize yourself, the healthier you'll be, and the less you'll criticize others. So let's look at why the inner critic is there in the first place. We have very difficult brains that were formed over thousands of years of evolution. And these brains were automatically wired to look for threats and to look for what's wrong. So our brains ended up like this because as human beings, we were absolutely not the strongest and we were absolutely not the fastest and we couldn't fly and we weren't the best swimmers and we couldn't breathe underwater. There's so much we couldn't do as human beings. The reason we survived as a human race is that we were extremely good at predicting where threats might be and reacting to threats and paying attention to threats and basically running away from those threats. And this wasn't such a problem until about 2 million years ago. Our brains developed the capacity to also imagine. Our imaginations developed. So we can imagine alternate realities. So our brains were already wired to look for threats. And then once the imagination kicked in, we started imagining those threats. We started imagining things that could be wrong or that are wrong that aren't even wrong. So our body started reacting not only to threats in the present, but to every possible scenario of anything ever going wrong or to things going wrong in the past. And that's when life got very difficult for human beings because our inner critic is basically around all the time. And if there's nothing to criticize in the present moment, our inner critic will imagine something that could go wrong or that did go wrong and will be critical of not even the present moment, just a hypothetical moment. The only way to get out of this default mode of suffering in the brain that scientists have found is to practice mindfulness, compassion, and self-compassion. So mindfulness is the full awareness of the present moment. Compassion is wishing for the long-term well-being of self and others, including all your difficult people. And self-compassion specifically is always wishing for your own long-term well-being. And self-compassion is this attitude that no matter what, I'm going to be on my own side. No matter what, I'm going to speak to myself kindly. And my value as a human being has nothing to do with anyone's approval or disapproval. Even if it's a client, even if it's a law firm partner, even if it's someone in a place of authority, my value as a human being is completely separate from anyone approving or disapproving of me. That's self-compassion. That's the attitude I most want to communicate to you in the next half hour. Well, the inner critic is just the opposite. The inner critic will always turn against you. It's always disappointed in us. It's always irritated. It's always sending the message that you are not enough. Self-compassion is always there for you, whether or not you're succeeding. So the inner critic will bash you if you're not succeeding. Self-compassion is if you, let's say, are going into a job interview, you know that if I get this job, I'll be kind to myself after. And if I don't get this job, I'll still be just as kind to myself after and just as aligned with my own long-term goals. So how does that sound for an attitude that is always with you? It gives you a lot of courage because we're afraid of failure often because we're afraid of our own inner voice. We're not afraid actually of the outside world. We're afraid of our own inner voice. And I know that a lot of you here are accomplished. We all went through law school. I know you're committed to improvement. Self-compassion is an amazing way to actually grow and improve. You could improve from a place of I hate myself, I'm the worst, I suck at everything, let me improve. And that's paralyzing. Or you can improve from a place of, for my own long-term well-being, I want to grow. I want to improve in every part of my life. As a gift to myself, let me grow professionally, let me grow in terms of how strong my body is, let me grow in terms of how healthy I am, let me grow my relationships. You can do it from a place of self-compassion. Self-compassion often is mistaken for other things that it's not. I find that sometimes people have a fear that if I'm self-compassionate, I'll get too complacent. Put a plus in the chat if you've had that thought already during this presentation, that if I'm too self-compassionate, I'll just be complacent. I was teaching this session at a partners retreat recently on self-compassion, and we were in a beautiful place in the mountains, and all the managing partners were there. And after the talk, a very successful law firm partner kind of takes me to the side and in a very quiet voice says, Elizabeth, I need to ask you a very serious question. And I never know what it is. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about this. He says, Elizabeth, I have to confide in you that I'm afraid that if I were really self-compassionate, I would just stay in my PJs all day. I would stay on the couch. I would eat ice cream and cake, and I would just watch reruns of my favorite shows. And that's all I do. And I just wouldn't do anything else if I was really to apply this and be self-compassionate. So my answer to this partner was that that's self-indulgence. What you're describing very well, staying on the couch every day of your life, eating ice cream and watching reruns, that's self-indulgence. Self-compassion is when you grow and you challenge yourself and you eat healthy and you take care of your body and you do hard things so you can thrive. So one of the main points I want to get across is that you can do anything as stemming from self-criticism or as stemming from your own self-compassion. So you can get up early to go to the gym tomorrow and say, I'm fat, I'm a terrible runner, I haven't exercised in ages, my clothes don't fit well, my friends look better than me, I'm going to go to the gym. That's one version, and it might depress you a little bit. It might be a little bit paralyzing to say those things to yourself, and you might not get to the gym. Or, for example, if I were to go exercise tomorrow morning, I would say, Elizabeth, I know you really want to spread compassion and self-compassion to the very stressful legal environment, so it can benefit people's lives, and you want to reach as many people as possible. And that takes inner strength, and that takes energy, and that takes a flexible, strong body so that I can feel good, so that I have energy, so that I can be healthy and act on my intentions. Let me do these strength training exercises tomorrow morning so that I can maintain my good mood and my optimism and be mentally strong and keep showing up for the things I care about as a gift to myself. Let me exercise tomorrow. Put a plus if you see the difference between the two. Same outcome. Ideally, you go to the gym in both cases, but vastly different way to get there. You can do very, very hard things as a gift to yourself. And thank you for those of you who are putting pluses. You can grow in every area of your life as a gift to yourself, not against you, but for you. Or you can do things as a way to punish yourself. You can do your work to punish yourself. You can eat broccoli to punish yourself. You can exercise to punish yourself. You can do almost anything in your life as self-punishment or as a gift to yourself. You get to decide how you approach it, and how you approach it changes the thing itself. So the difference between a self-critical statement and a self-compassionate statement, it's not in the content. It's all about how it's spoken. So self-criticism always has this desire to condemn or punish. Self-compassion has the desire to improve. Not like you did a terrible job in that interview, but let me see how I can improve so I can be a better interviewer. Self-compassion is spoken with contempt. Self-criticism is spoken with contempt. Self-compassion is spoken with kindness or encouragement. And self-criticism always focuses on a global sense of self, like you suck, you are not enough. It's very global. Self-compassion looks at something specific. Like if I made a mistake, it was in a specific context. what happened. Let's look at all the details and all the specifics of what happened. So those are the main differences. And I hope that this inspires you to transition to a voice that's more like speaking to a loved one or a friend. And that can be your source of strength. Trying to be the best we can, but also allowing ourselves to have limitations. The inner critic is like, you're not allowed to have limitations. But the truth is, anything that's living and breathing has limitations and makes mistakes. But there's no mistake you can make that thousands of others haven't also made. And it's important to remember that. I want to focus on why the inner critic is problematic. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche summarized this very well when he wrote that the problem with blame is that every time there is blame, what it prompts is the desire to seek revenge. So when there's blame, when there's inner critic, what that leads to is revenge. Any ideas? How do we get revenge on ourselves? We have such a rich toolkit of ways we can get revenge on ourselves. There's a lot we can do. What are maybe a couple ways? Yeah, stay up too late and not sleep, even when we can't get the sleep. Total. Any self-sabotage is basically revenge. Over binge on junk food, not finish a project you could have finished. Working too hard and too late. Yes, that comes from the inner critic. That's a form of self-sabotage. And then the next morning, it's hard to do your work as well as you'd like. I don't wish that for you. So let's do another self-compassion meditation to strengthen our self-compassion and to quiet our inner critic. So with your permission, let's do another 3-4 minute practice. As an act of self-compassion, find stillness in your body in a way that's comfortable for you. Feeling heavy in your chair. Let your body rest fully for these few moments, gently closing the eyes. Let the shoulders release. Find the movement of the breath as it enters your nostrils and exits your nostrils. When we shift our awareness to the simplicity of the breath, in that moment, we're not self-critical, we're just with the breath. Noticing the breath with warmth, with curiosity. And the mind will wander from the breath. Thank the mind. Say, thank you, mind, for trying to protect. And now put one or both hands on the heart. Feel the heart with your hands. Feel the warm palm to your heart. You can even put both hands there, one on top of the other. Connect to this area, my heart. And wish for yourself, may I be happy. Send yourself the genuine wish, may I be happy. May my thoughts, my words, and my actions contribute to my happiness. And now that that's sunk in, say for yourself, may I be healthy. May my words, my actions, and my thoughts contribute to my health. May what I do and what I say to myself and others contribute to my overall well-being. May I find peace. May I find joy. Setting the intention to release yourself from harsh judgments, to release yourself from that heaviness. Choosing to relate to yourself from a place of compassion and gratitude. Saying for yourself, I release myself from blame. I support myself unconditionally. I am unconditionally on my own side. I am here on this earth to be friendly toward myself, to be on my own side. Set the intention to be kind to your heart, to your body, and to support yourself in every moment, in every circumstance, no matter what, just as you are. And now thank yourself for doing this practice. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your seat in the chair. Feel the air as it touches your skin. And as you feel ready, beginning to open your eyes, coming back gently. And welcome back from our deep self-compassion meditation. How did that go? And I'd love just popcorn style to hear just a word, a phrase. Meditation is always an act of self-compassion. Not only does it calm our nervous system and boost our immune system, and some of you saying it's calming, relaxing, wonderful. As you meditate, your brain actually gets larger. So people who meditate physically have bigger brains than people who don't. Just like people who lift weights have bigger muscles than people who don't. Usually age 25 on, our brains start to decline in volume every year, and meditators don't have the same age-related decline. And you might think, well, how much meditation does it take to really make a difference? Just 3 hours total of meditation leads to improved quality of life. After 11 hours, the changes are actually apparent in the brain. So someone could put you in an MRI scan and say, this person meditates. So it doesn't take long for these changes to sink in. And as a way to battle the inner critic, I would say that the most important way to do it is to have a daily meditation practice. And as we come to the end of me talking, I want to kind of be in dialogue and answer your questions in the second half. I want to give you some practical ways to practice self-compassion. The first practical way is to do self-compassion meditations. I would say in our current culture that is so good at making us self-critical, it's very important to practice self-compassion daily, including a meditation. And the legal profession also makes us very, very, very self-critical. As lawyers, your client is always going to want something faster, or might want a different outcome, or might want something to be less expensive. In an apprenticeship system, there are more senior lawyers criticizing you. We internalize that voice. Loved ones, I think, can be critical of lawyers, saying you're too consumed by your job. I think a lawyer is always stuck between a lot of different fires, and that also builds out our inner critics. So I think for lawyers especially, it's very, very important to cultivate freedom from the inner critic. So some things you can do on a daily basis is keep doing the things you're doing, but add to it the intention of self-kindness, or the intention of growth, or the intention of discovering your full potential, or connecting to yourself, or connecting to others. So when you do something hard, you can have the intention of growth. If you're brushing your teeth You have the intention of a healthy body. Add a self-compassion intention on the go to the things you're already doing. That's the first practice. The second practice is when making a decision, ask yourself, is this good for my own long-term well-being? Will my future self thank me that I'm doing this today? This is a way to not self-sabotage on the one hand, and to not fall into the trap of self-indulgence on the other hand. So, will my future self thank me for this? And we have a lot of self-critical voices in our heads in the present. So you might be wondering, if I'm already self-critical, what do I do? Two things you can do. You can add the phrase, and may I be happy. So it sounds so simple, but it works really well. Like, that was stupid, and may I be happy. I could have done that better, and may I be happy. You can know that your inner critic will always tell you could have done it better, or you could have done more, or you should have done less. Add this, and may I be happy, to come back to a self-compassionate intention. Or if someone is criticizing you, which also happens, ask yourself the question, does this voice have my best interest at heart? So any voice that is critical, do this check and only listen to voices that do have your best interest at heart. Don't listen to voices that don't. And that includes your own voice. When you are talking to yourself, ask yourself, does this voice have my best interest at heart? Another great technique in the moment, we started with this, is the 4-7-8 breath. We've taken a few today already. If you find that you are very self-critical and you would like more self-compassion, take 3-4-7-8 breaths. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale out through the mouth like through a straw for 8. And right away, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is a pathway towards self-compassion. And if something is really difficult and it's happening in the present, add the phrase, may I give myself the compassion that I need. In this moment, may I give myself the compassion that I need. I find that there's nothing you can't do or can't accomplish when you are fully on your own side. When you're on your own side, you don't do yourself harm. And the person in our lives who actually does us the most harm is often ourselves. So once you take out the self-sabotage, there's really nothing you can do. And I would also recommend meditating at least once a day. So I'd love to share a site with you that has my meditation recordings. So you can do, and this is free, like there's no catch, there's no ads. So you can do a meditation whenever you feel like. I've recorded many of them. I want to ask you to share a takeaway from today's session. And it also has the option of sharing your email, and I'll send you many, many self-compassion meditations later tonight. So this is a link. It just has one box for you to share a takeaway from today, and I'll pass them all on to Jennifer, and she can email them to you. And you can share a takeaway, and please, if you like, share your email and your name, and I will send you a list of practices, kind of all the ways you can practice self-compassion on the go, because I know you're very busy. And I'll also send you a list of meditations. Some are just 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long. Some are 10, 20 minutes long. You can choose. And hopefully you'll go away from this session with all the tools to keep taming your inner critic and practicing self-compassion. So for the takeaway, just share any aha moment you had. And I'd love to hear from all of you. And then again tonight, you will receive an email with meditations, practices, and ways to keep going on the self-compassion journey. And instead of sharing them in the chat, your emails and your, click on the link. Maybe I wasn't clear. Click on the link I shared in the chat, and then it'll take you to a place where all of those will be saved, because the chat will disappear, or I won't have access to it at least. So just click on the link, Joseph and Elisa, and it'll take you to a place where everything will be saved. And I'll give you just a minute to do that. And if you are done, come back to the feeling of the breath in your nostrils, because when you're in the present or you're with the breath, you're not being self-critical, and that is a huge gift to yourself. And I see the responses are starting to come through. And we'll do Q&A next once you're done. So put a happy face when you're done with your takeaway. And oh, there's another thing I want to share. There's another resource. I send an inspiring daily self-compassion text message. And if you like, you can join. You can get your phone out. All you need to do is text the word 2023, the number 41372, and you'll receive a free daily message every day. And you can always unsubscribe. So those are resources I want to leave you with, because I hope you can keep practicing all of this when we're done today. So go like this if you're done with your takeaway, if you wanted to fill it out. Wonderful. So let's do Q&A. Please put any question in the chat that you may have about anything, me, meditation, self-compassion, inner critic, being a lawyer and still being self-compassionate. I run an organization called Self-Compassion for Lawyers. So this is the message I most want to get across. So yeah, please put any question in the chat that you would like answered. I can talk about religion. You haven't gotten the link yet. Steve, oh, the link is in the chat. It's in the chat, so you can just click on it. It'll stay on your desktop and you can put your takeaway. And as we do that, I can talk about ancient traditions and the inner critic. I can talk more about the science of the inner critic, whatever you would like, or any specific questions I can address. This is one thing we didn't talk about yet. The link, how is self-esteem different from self-compassion? Let's address that. Even though no one asked it, I feel like this should be part of this conversation. Self-esteem is when you look at someone and you feel good about yourself because you're smarter or you're more successful or you rate yourself more highly than them in some aspect. And then you're kind to yourself. And if you feel like you're worse than others, you're awful to yourself. That's self-esteem. So self-esteem leads to like a bouncing, a yo-yo effect of your self-worth. And self-compassion is even more there for you when something isn't going well, when you need that self-worth, when you need that confidence, when you need that support. Self-compassion is always there for you. And also self-esteem leads us to sometimes put ourselves higher than others to kind of, for the sake of upholding our self-esteem, we need to feel better than others. So we're less likely to learn from others. We're less likely to own up to a mistake. So it's not helpful in terms of clarity. So that's the difference. I see, Alex, any insights from the Jewish tradition on these issues that you're aware of? So the Talmud, one of the most sacred Jewish texts, says that the day you were born is the day God decided that the world can no longer exist without you, just as you are. That's the Talmud. That comes to mind right away as self-compassion in the Jewish tradition. And I think there is no better system of self-compassion built into any tradition than Shabbat. Like Shabbat is an amazing self-compassion protection that's just built in. We should all, no matter what religion we're from, take that time every week to rest. So I think actually Judaism does a really good job with self-compassion. Any other questions? I don't have the reference with me, but it's there.
Elizabeth, something you have done in your past programs for NISBA for compassion and gratitude is talked about really the ancient where it first shows up, and I find that so validating to know that these concepts have been around for so long. So I don't know if you have any of that for the inner critic.
Oh, thanks for asking. So there's an amazing ancient legend of when the first mention of the inner critic in world history. It's in the Buddhist tradition. So I can tell you a story about that. And I think it's very interesting. It's the moment of the Buddha's enlightenment. The moment when the inner critic first shows up in world culture, world literature is in the Buddhist tradition. 530 BC, I think you know the story, right? 530 BC, the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree. He meditates, he achieves enlightenment, and then he becomes a great teacher. Put a plus if you've heard that story before. It's a very common story. We all have that image of the Buddha meditating under the tree. What you may not know is how the inner critic plays into the story. So the thing that the historical Buddha needed to overcome in order to get to enlightenment was his own inner critic. So in Buddhism, the inner critic is this mythological being called Mara. And Mara is like this blue, very, very scary monster. And Mara is like our inner psychic structure externalized as a being. And Mara is basically like the devil. In Buddhism, Mara is the word of death, the demon of ignorance, and also a force of darkness. It's all those things. So as you can tell, Buddhism doesn't think very highly of the inner critic. So the Buddha on the day of his enlightenment is there meditating. Everything is going well. Everything is peaceful. The Buddha is sending compassion to the whole world. And then Mara, the inner critic, shows up and tries to get the Buddha off track. The Buddha is just sending compassion. Mara tries to sabotage and to stir fear and just stir doubt. And they need to distract him. And nothing works. Mara gets very impatient and very scared. And in kind of last desperate attempt, Mara turns to the Buddha and says, "Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to accomplish this? Who do you think you are to achieve enlightenment?" So what is this? This is imposter syndrome of 530 BC. This is imposter. Before democracy existed or books existed, imposter syndrome is already reported in world history. And that Mara basically says, "Who are you to be enlightened and happy and wise and free?" And then the Buddha does something very important in that moment. And this is a very big moment in Buddhist theology. The Buddha doesn't argue with Mara. He just takes his hand and he puts his hand on the earth. And it's this magical moment where Buddha says, "The earth is my witness. The earth is my witness for my right to be here, for my right to be happy, and to take this seat of awakening and happiness and inner light. It's just because I'm alive. I'm not going to give you reasons or excuses." What the Buddha is saying is that we all have this inherent right to take our seats, to strive for happiness, to achieve happiness, to find inner freedom. So the Buddha could have said, "I'm Siddhartha and I'm a prince and I'm from a great family and I'm smart and I'm educated, so I deserve to reach enlightenment." But he didn't say that because that's conditional. As soon as something is conditional, the inner critic can get in there. He said, "I won't have imposter syndrome and I'll be kind to myself and I'll reach enlightenment just because I am alive. I can be kind to myself and all beings and I don't need to listen to my inner critic just because I am alive." And in this way, he assumes that we all have this right. Not only he's alive, but anyone who's alive, any living being on this earth has this right. I'll quote something from the Pali Canon. This is from an ancient text called Udana, from the Buddha. "You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the universe, deserve your love and affection." So what I like about this ancient myth is that for the Buddha, it's not coming from ego. He's not putting himself above anyone else. It's not, "I deserve this because I meditate and I go to fancy talks and I'm a member of the New York State Bar Association and I'm a lawyer, so I deserve all of this. I don't deserve it any more or any less than anyone else, but I deserve it." And I find there's a lot of dignity to that. And one of the key teachings in Buddhism is that we're not here to judge, we're here to pay attention. And it's when the Buddha overcomes the inner critic that he reaches enlightenment. It's when the Buddha is able to have unconditional kindness for himself. That's what lets him reach enlightenment. It's that very last stage. When the inner critic has no more power over the Buddha is free. Because freedom in Buddhism is inner freedom, it's not outer freedom. Actually, now that we're talking about, we mentioned Judaism, Buddhism, let's mention Christianity. A similar idea is embedded in Christianity. So Mara in Buddhism is basically like the devil. The word devil comes from the Latin diablo, and it doesn't mean evil. And the idea is, what does diablo actually mean? So this is a Christian tradition. Devil doesn't mean evil. What does devil mean? Diablo. It means blamer. Devil literally means, its etymology is one who criticizes or one who divides. So Christianity also has this sense that the devil as the one who criticizes it. So that's kind of our overview of world religions. And I hope this framework helps you overcome your inner critic, your perfectionist, your taskmaster, your inner controller, your inner guilt tripper, your inner underminer or molder or inner tyrant, belittler. I hope that it helps you with all of those. Any voice that doesn't let you breathe or gives you space to be yourself or to feel how you feel. Oh, and in Judaism, the devil is a prosecutor. Interesting. Yeah, so I love it when ancient traditions agree. And when the science also agrees, that the science suggests is as you start practicing self-compassion, you become healthier, happier, you have better relationships, and you're actually more productive, not less productive. So it's a nice topic when Christianity and actually Hinduism, which we didn't mention, and Buddhism and Judaism all align together with ancient Chinese philosophy and the science behind it. So I see we're in our last minute. I want to send you some wishes, and in the last minute, give you the chance to receive. Steve is asking, will there be materials and a follow-up email? So if you did leave your email in the takeaway, so I'll put that link again. If you put a takeaway here and leave your email, I'll send you an email with practices and with a link to a bunch of meditations you can keep doing, maybe some readings. You'll get a full package. Okay, so sending you some wishes in our last minute. So just close your eyes and receive. Self-compassion has two parts, giving compassion and receiving compassion. So now you'll just get to practice receiving. My wish to you is, may you be happy. May you be kind to yourself. May you be healthy. May you be safe inside and out. May you receive great encouragement from the inside and the outside. May there be ease in everything you do. May your mind be calm. May your body be open. And may your heart be full of compassion for yourself and all the people in your life. So those are my wishes to you. And again, if you want to stay in touch, I'll put my email in the chat. You can send me an email with questions if there's something that didn't get answered. If you want to get the inspiring daily text, you can just text the word 2023 to the number 41372 and you'll get reminders about all of this. Let me know how I can support you. I create culture shift and well-being programs inside law firms and for judges and in also outside the legal world, but very much in the legal world. If there is someone who you think could benefit from this work, please connect me. I love having conversations with organizations and other people to see how I can help the legal field become more self-compassionate to increase the overall well-being of the legal field. So please connect me if you like. And I just wish you a wonderful night. So go out and do something kind for the only person in this world who you can really make happy, which is yourself. So my assignment to you is after this talk, go out and do something really, really kind, really, really nice to the only person who you can actually make truly happy in this life. It was very nice to see you. Thank you, Jennifer, for this opportunity. Thank you to the New York State Bar Association for being an amazing organization. And I wish you all a good night.
Thank
Bye,
you so
everyone.
much, Elizabeth. Take care, everyone. Thank you for spending your evening with us.